Hey everyone, it's Ivan, KitBadger.com, here to bring you a quick testimonial of Viking Tactics. I had the good fortune of taking NightFighter 101 with Viking Tactics. I was really struck by the level of professionalism and instruction provided by both Kyle Lamb as well as Chili Palmer. Amazing instructors. I also had a chance to talk with Kyle briefly about just kind of how he was able to keep his skills sharp, as well as kind of progress and move forward with his skills with respect to being a shooter.
Okay, so as far as the basic fundamentals, I practice those all the time, but I'm also trying to push myself. And the way that I do that is I try to get on the range with other folks that are either as good or better shooters than I am, so that I can see what they're doing. I also shoot a lot with military and law enforcement guys and high-level civilian shooters, and I'm trying to pick their brain to see what they're doing so I can increase, my skill set.
Well, speaking with Kyle, I also had the chance to kind of ask him how he evolved as an instructor, how he kind of tweaked his methods and got to the point where he was, where actually does a really amazing job as an instructor.
So I think at Viking Tactics, my knowledge base has built as an instructor. Since I got out of the military, I was an instructor in the military, that helped. Being around a lot of people that were very critical of your instruction capability. But then I went to the civilian side. When I started dealing with American law enforcement, they wanted to try to catch me. I had to have the answers before they even asked the questions. So as a shooting instructor, the more that I can do it, the better I can get, the more students I have in contact with. And lastly, probably the most important thing is I've learned from my students. We used to do a lot of course critiques. I read every one of those critiques. When people email us, if they've got negative comments, I want to know what that is, because I want to become a better instructor every time I go on the range.
Both Kyle Lamb as well as Chili Palmer, they're lifelong students. You can see it interacting with them in their course. They're not taking stuff saying, hey, I learned this from back when I was in the service. Granted, there's plenty of that, but it's also, hey, I learned this last week, let me show it to you. It might work for you in these different situations. Constantly attaining knowledge. And a quick story to that end. I ended up at one point, I was talking to Kyle with respect to flashlights, and issue of canines came up, and I was like, hey Kyle, what about this? And he's like, I don't really think so. He's like, honestly, I don't think that'll work. And I'm like, okay. I was satisfied, I got an answer. And a number of days pass, I'm back home, phone rings. I'm like, I don't recognize this number. I'm like, hey, Ivan speaking. Hey Ivan, it's Kyle. Hey Kyle, what's going on? He's like, hey, so at the class you'd asked me this question. I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay, well, I was thinking about it, wasn't really sure about it, reached out to a buddy of mine, basically. He's like, do you know so-and-so? I'm like, I don't. Pillar in the community, instructor, handler, trainer for canines, all this stuff. And he's like, so the actual answer to your question is this. And I'm like, thanks, man. And it was one of those where he gave me an answer and he's like, you know what? I don't feel like that was a very good answer to the question. And now I'm actually really curious what the answer is. And went out, pursued that, pursuit of knowledge, went out, found that answer. And rather than just satiating his curiosity with respect to, hey, what is the answer to this question, found that answer, went out of his way, called me and was like, hey, the answer to your question is this. And I can't say more about someone in the pursuit of knowledge than that story right there. And that pretty much defines Kyle Lamb, Chili Palmer, and Viking Tactics. If you have the opportunity to take a class by Viking Tactics, I encourage you to jump on it. It can be hard to find. They're booked out like a year and a half in advance, which basically speaks to the level of instruction you're going to get. And one of the best places you can actually go to find a class, because a lot of them are strictly for law enforcement or military, but if you go to the SIG Academy, they'll often host them, as well as they have a home range, so kind of got to look around, search it out, but definitely worth the effort. As always, thanks for joining us at KitBadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time. Can't tell you where I was going, so tired it was showing, like the wind I am blowing every town.
Test 1, 2, 3, 4, check 1, 2, 3, 4. Kit Badger is the man. How's that sound?